Hi, I'm Sky Pettit, the Director of Network Services for OneNet. You've probably heard the term digital footprint, the record of data that you put out into the virtual world. But footprints can be erased. Your virtual data, on the other hand, can't. It's more like a tattoo, a permanent record of your life on the internet, and hackers want to steal it. Getting access to your digital tattoo means someone has control of your information. They can infiltrate your personal information as well as your work files. For a school, this is especially dangerous. If the digital infrastructure is compromised, the data from the student body could be exposed and sold on the dark web, leaving them vulnerable to online harassment and exploitation. But there are ways to keep our information safe. The first step is prevention. Be aware of what you share online and who you share it with. Don't open files or attachments that you weren't expecting or don't know the origin of, even if they're from people that you know. Scan flash drives for viruses and malware before you open any of the files. Stay away from websites that can be hotbeds for malware, like free online game sites and adware links. If you think your data has been compromised, change your passwords immediately and alert your administration. Let them know as soon as possible. Hackers won't wait. They'll steal what they can and use it to their advantage. You can't get rid of your digital tattoo, but you can protect it from hackers and the dark web. Do your part to keep yourself and your students safer in the digital age. For more information, contact the Office of School Safety and Security by either phone or email, or visit our page at the Oklahoma State Department of Education website.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michelann Ooten. I'm with the Oklahoma Department of Education and specifically with the Office of School Safety and Security. Welcome to today's webinar on cybersecurity. It's part of a series of webinars from our office under awareness and action webinars, if you will. Today's webinar couldn't come any more well-timed, I do believe. Look into the last couple of weeks of news, and the headlines there tell us the need to be prepared under the headline of cybersecurity. So I first want to tell you a little bit about the Office of School Safety and Security. So Jason, if you can go to the next slide. We are part of the Oklahoma State Department of Education. Our team works on a number of things with schools to include emergency operations plans, and other planning documents, to include certainly annexes devoted to cybersecurity. First, I want to tell you a little bit about our personnel, our team. There you have John Parker on the upper left, our executive director. Across from him, Cindy Swearingen is our assistant executive director. You'll see me there under John. You'll see Steve Lynch there to the right and Jason down below him. We are all school safety and security specialists. And then we have Lindsay Moore. Truly, she's the glue that holds our office together. She's our coordinator. So I will give kudos at the outset to Jason Gray. He is the one behind the scenes making all this happen in partnership with Gary Hurst, part of our Department of Education. So with that, we can go to the next slide. So here today, we're going to talk about cybersecurity and what school officials need to know to help keep their district safe. I'm going to identify the speakers and give you their titles, and then I'll give you a little more about each one of them as they begin to speak. Today, we're lucky enough to have Laquetta Russel, who's the cybersecurity advisor for the Oklahoma Department of Emergency Management and Homeland Security. She's with us. We also have Brian Burkhart, who is the Senior Director of Network Systems with OneNet. So today we're discussing cybersecurity in schools. And again, thanks to our great speakers, we're going to learn what schools and other organizations face every day in the cyber arena. We will also learn what steps can be taken to prevent or at least mitigate the damage caused by a cyber incident. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we ask the first speaker to begin. We do have the chat available. We would like people to go ahead and put their questions in the chat. We will identify and work to answer those questions after both speakers have made their presentations. Additionally, we are recording today's webinar. I'll give you more information about how you'd be able to find that where it will be posted at the end of today's session. And with that, I want to introduce the first speaker. Laquetta Russel, like I said, is the Cybersecurity Advisor for the Oklahoma Department of Emergency Management, Homeland Security. Laquetta is the OEM State Cybersecurity Advisor charged with developing and implementing a cybersecurity program and capacity for emergency management practices and processes statewide. Laquetta has 18 years of experience, almost 2 decades worth of experience working in technology in the public and private sectors. She has work experience managing cybersecurity and infrastructure projects as the project manager. She has also been an IT manager for a large government organization managing daily operations of security provisioning and systems administration. Moreover, Laquetta has experience in compliance, audit, information security program management, and emergency preparedness and response. And with that, I'll turn it over to Laquetta. Thank you for being here. Laquetta, are you out there?
I'm just trying to get unmuted.
No problem. Thank you so much. Go ahead.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Let's see my video here. There we go. All right. So thank you, Michelann, for that introduction. I am going to be speaking to you guys for a little bit about cybersecurity for schools, and it's my pleasure to be here. Next slide, please. As you know, cybersecurity exists in every aspect of our lives, whether it be at home, at work, in school. We're online in one way or another. So today we'll be looking at some cyber incidents that happened within the educational sector last year and in previous years, and trying to provide you with some tips for keeping your information safe and you just being safe online. Next slide, please. It was very interesting to me to know or to see that out of 17 major industries, the education industry ranked last in cybersecurity preparedness. So we're gonna look at that a little bit. Next slide. So educational institutions are attractive targets for cyber criminals. When we look at it, this is the educational sector is a $760 billion industry serving over 50 million students. So that's a huge industry. And when I looked at it, it was a perfect target for criminals because you have a lot of the same personal health and financial information as you do with other sectors. And you're collecting that information, that sensitive information for your students, for their parents, for families and educators, and school staff and district operations. So that's one reason that that the education sector is a good target for cyber criminals. Another thing is, many schools lease or own big, powerful internet connections. So cyber criminals take advantage of that, and they may repurpose those systems. They use those to hack or launch attacks against other victims. And then, systems are often compromised because of the academic culture. One of the things in academia is the openness of information, and they encourage students to use mobile devices and their laptops and all that stuff on the school networks. Next slide, please. So the educational institutions, they I'm sorry, we're on the next slide. Okay. In 2020, last year, we had 408 publicly disclosed school incidents across 40 states. And that includes 377 school districts. That's quite a bit. And the types of incidents that was reported was mainly the data breaches. We had ransomware, we had denial of services, and we had other types. I'm sorry, could you go back a couple of slides, please? I was going to go into a little bit detail. So when we look at student data breaches for the year 2020, there were 145 data breach incidents involving public schools, and that represented about 36% of the incidents that were disclosed for the year of 2020. In most cases, it was identified about 75% of those incidents. The root cause was it was due to security practices among school vendors and partners. Next slide, please. The second most frequent type of incident experienced by school districts was ransomware. And it seems like quite a bit. There was about 50 incidents documented with ransomware, but that was down to 24%. It was about 28% in 2019, but this in 2020, it was down to 24%. But that's still a lot of ransomware attacks for school districts. Next slide. School districts are also frequently subjected to mass email phishing campaigns with individual students and staff. But most of those phishing campaigns or those phishing emails, those are, they were able to be dealt with by your local IT staff. So they didn't rise to the level of public disclosure. Phishing attacks, however, where they're more targeted attacks, they may be targeting school administrators or your superintendent or somebody that's authorized to, they're authorized to they have the authority to do large transactions. So those were more severe in the incidents. And it was kind of surprising too that, if they range from anywhere from $200,000 to one large school district, they spent out $9.8 million. So those types of attacks are more severe. And then denial of services, that's, where users are the systems are unavailable to the users to use. Next slide, please. Safeguarding your data. How to be safe and secure and successful online. We're going to give you some tips for being safe online. Always have a strong password. Make sure that your passwords are kind of complex. You might use a combination of numbers and symbols and letters. You might use passphrases. These are some words or so that you can put together that's easy for you to remember. Use unique passwords for different accounts. You don't want to make sure that you don't use the same password that you use to log in to work, and you log into Facebook or you log into your banking account. So try to use unique passwords for each of those accounts. And then if you think that your account, your passwords have been compromised, make sure that you change those as soon as possible. Never allow public computers to remember your password. You need to say no if your system pops up and say, do you want to remember the password? You say no. And a good thing that you can use, or something that I use a password manager. So, you have all of these passwords for, everything. You have an account for everything. So I have a lot of different passwords. So I use a password manager to help me, for one thing, to help me remember passwords. I don't have to think about it. And then it helps generate passwords, long, complex passwords. So that's one thing that you can use. And then make sure that, if you happen to use a public device or some public Wi-Fi or something like that, you could use a VPN on that to, make sure that your connection or the things that you're logging into is encrypted and not available for everybody to see. Enable strong authentication. Always use strong authentication. Use a multi-factor authentication where they send you a one-time code to your mobile device. You put that code in. It seems like almost every institution, especially banking institutions, right now, when you log into your system, you log in with the username and password, they will have a two-factor authentication, and they'll send you a code, and you enter that, and that adds an extra layer of protection for you. And then keep a clean machine. Update your security software, your operating systems, your web browsers, and any applications that you have. Update those when the patches come out, or and make sure that you're keeping your security software up to date to prevent attackers from taking advantage of those known vulnerabilities. And then when in doubt, throw it out. Links, emails, online posts are often ways that cyber criminals compromise your computer. So, if you're not familiar with it, if it looks suspicious, if you don't know the source, just go ahead and delete it. And then share with care. Limit the amount of personal information you share online, and use privacy settings to avoid sharing too much information or information widely. Next slide, please. Don't fall for phishing schemes. We spoke earlier about, there's a lot of phishing campaigns that go out. The best way to avoid these is not to take any action on them. If you get an email that doesn't look right, just delete it. Text messages, we get a lot of those. I noticed that I get a lot of these on my state phone of people sending me text messages, and I just delete those also. Don't answer phone calls when you don't recognize the number. We get a whole lot of telemarketing and just all kind of calls, and I don't know how they get your phone number, but they do. So just kind of ignore those. If you're not expecting a call, don't answer them. Never give personal information out via an email to someone that you don't recognize or that's in your contact list. If people call wanting your social security number or personal information, just don't provide that information if you're not expecting it. And I wouldn't give it out in an email anyway. If you keep being a target of the same number or email, try to block them. And if you're not familiar with how to do that, you can reach out to your service provider and they can show you how to block those individuals that keep trying to contact you. Next slide. Okay, how to recognize a scam. If there's unfamiliar sources, if you never receive any interaction with somebody that's sending you something, just be wary of that. If it's from a person or a company that you don't recognize, be really wary of that. Odd email addresses, anyone can fake an email. You might want to hover over the email address and it'll tell you actually where it's coming from. And if you get something in an email, a URL or something like that, you can hover over that too, and it'll give you what the real email address is. Direct requests for personal information, we just spoke about that a little bit, and money. Don't send any money, don't give out any social security numbers or bank account numbers or passwords to people just because they ask. It's just a stranger on the other side. And then a lot of times we'll see these emails and they just have a whole lot of errors in them. The spellings are bad, and a lot of times the criminals send badly written messages to increase their chances of sending that information out to you, trying to get you to click on something. And too good to be true offers, if it's doesn't seem right, it's unlikely, it's unrealistic, it probably is too good to be true, then it probably is too good, probably is untrue. So don't fall for that. And then strange attachments. When you receive strange attachments, and you're not familiar with the sender, or if you get an attachment and it has an EXE associated with it, it's better not to open those. And you can reach out to your administrator, your IT staff, and say, look, I got this thing and I don't know what it is. So notify them of that. Next slide, please. So malware can enter an enterprise or school or business any number of ways. It could be an email attachment, it could be a malicious app, it could be a web page, it could be USB drives, these thumb drives. There's a lot of times that cyber criminals, they will just drop some USB drives around, they'll leave them around, and people are curious, so they'll pick them up and they'll put them in the computer to see what's on there, and then they've infected their system, they've infected the network. So one of the most important things that you can do is install antivirus software on your devices and make sure that you're protected no matter what. There's Windows 10, they have Windows Defender that comes with Windows, so you might utilize that if you're more than likely your agency or your school district, your IT people have already installed some sort of antivirus software on your systems. But if you have your personal devices, you want to make sure that you have some antivirus software installed as well. Next slide, please. Tips schools can use to mitigate cybersecurity risk. Have a clear guidelines in place. I know with a lot of the remote learning and distant learning, educators look for lots of e-learning tools to make things easier for their students, and they look at different learning resources. And we just want to make sure that those tools and those resources have been properly vetted, and that you're following your school's security privacy policies. And so we can make sure that we can make sure that, for educators, that if you have a list of authorized software, that your teachers don't have to go and try to figure that out. Educate your users. It's important for students, teachers, and other school staff to be educated on basic online safety. So one of the things you may do is have a security and awareness training program, and make sure that your educators or your faculty and your students, they annually take a training, security and education awareness training, to make sure that they know what to do and what not to do. Do not click on these links and that kind of stuff, because we can have as many controls, technical controls in place, but if you have that one user that clicks on that phishing email, then now your systems are compromised. And then update your password protocols. I don't know how often you guys, if you have a set, every 60 days or every 90 days, you have to change your password. You might make sure that you have a password policy identified. And then if you think that your password has been compromised, go ahead and change that password. And then identify potential gaps. Remote learning brings unique opportunities and challenges for schools. Students and educators, they use their personal devices. So, we need to go back and look, to make sure that we don't have unsecured, devices on our network. Next slide, please. So what is your security posture? Do you have written information security policies? Do your staff look at or read and sign computer usage policies that kind of lets them know what they can and cannot do when they're logged into systems? Do you have a cybersecurity and incident response plan? I know a lot of schools, they have an emergency operations plan. So have you included a cyber component to that, so that if you do have an incident, you know what to do? Your players know what roles they play. You know when to activate that plan, and who to contact. If you have a security contractor on contract, you know, when to call them. And you identify, you know, what needs to happen to isolate those systems and, you know, get those things contained so that you can get it back recovered at some point. And then I already spoke to the security education awareness training, you know, have some sort of training program in place to where, you know, your users are getting regular training. And then the last one is segment your network. You know, with educators, you have your faculty, you have your students, you have your daily operations. You might want to, you know, segment those so that if you do have an incident, you know, your whole network is not put at risk. So next slide, please. Cybersecurity reporting, along with some of your policies and procedures and your incident response, you need to let your users know how to report that, you know, if they've gotten this email that seems suspicious, or they've clicked on something and now, you know, they have this message on their screen. So what do they do? You know, how do you report that? You know, for our local governments and municipalities, we give them some procedures to follow. And when they call us, they would provide their name and contact information. They'll talk about, you know, what the incident is, give a little bit of detail on that. So just kind of get your users ready, or get them used to providing information to you guys. We have the Fusion Center. If you get an incident, you might want to contact your local law enforcement. You can contact the Fusion Center. They collect information and they share information with other entities. We have, if it's a big incident, it's a significant incident, you might contact the FBI. A lot of times they've been notified about other incidents, so that's a good resource. And then we have our local emergency managers. If they need to identify, or if they want to notify us of an incident, they call our watch desk to notify us, and we'll make an entry into our web EOC. Next slide, please. And I've listed some resources here in Oklahoma. We have CISA. There's at the federal level, we have CISA. We actually have a physical security advisor that's here in Oklahoma City. And the next one, we have the Oklahoma Emergency Management Homeland Security. I work really closely with our state and local entities to try and address cyber issues and threats, and provide notifications or advisories when we receive those. And then you have the Oklahoma Information Fusion Center, as I mentioned before. And they collect a lot of information, and they share information with private sector and public sector. If they get some threats, they share that information out. And then we have OMES, Office of Management Enterprise Services. That's our state lead responsible for our networks and our state assets. And they have a whole cyber team. They can help with providing information or contact information if you have an incident and you're needing to know, who do I contact? There's some contracts that they can make you familiar with. And lastly on there is the OK ISAC. That's an Oklahoma information sharing and analysis center, and they have memberships with the private sector, with state and locals, and they provide real-time threat information that they get from MS-ISAC and other FBI and other entities. They make that available to their members. And one thing that I didn't put on here is MS-ISAC. They are the multi-state information analysis center. They have a lot of resources. They have resources on cybersecurity and awareness. They have toolkits. They have that site has a lot of resources. If you have a chance, you might visit that. Next slide, please. I've listed just some resources where you could go out and find some information on information security. There's information from the K through 12 cybersecurity website that was really good information. And these are just a list of resources that you might use to help you stay safe online. Next slide. This is my contact information. If you have any questions, it's been a pleasure talking to you guys or speaking with you guys today. Don't hesitate to reach out to me. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Laquetta. That was wonderful. I know people must have questions out there. Please don't be shy. Go ahead and post those in the chat, and we will get to them after the next speaker. And with that, again, thank you, Laquetta, and I will introduce the next speaker. Brian Burkhart is the Senior Director of Network Systems for OneNet at Oklahoma State Regents for Higher Education. OneNet, in case you don't know, is Oklahoma's advanced network for research and education, serving educational, research, and public service entities. The Network Systems team manages servers, storage, applications, video conferencing, virtual infrastructure, data center operations, and information security for OneNet. That's a lot. Brian is also active in research facilitation, grant initiatives, and cyber infrastructure for OneNet. He started with OneNet in 1999 as a systems engineer. And with that, I'll let you take it over, Brian. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Michelann. Thanks for having me. And thanks, Laquetta. That was a great presentation. I'm going to echo a few of the things that Laquetta talked about briefly, and then hopefully we'll get some good questions that we can talk about. This is kind of picked out 5 things to kind of highlight. First things you can do to try to protect yourselves. The first thing is educate your teachers, your students, your staff, about how to handle themselves on the internet. One good thing you can do is, Laquetta mentioned, security policy. And that can become real technical and legal sounding, but really it's a document, hopefully, that's easy to read for your teachers and your students and staff, so that they understand what's expected of them. Don't make it too complicated. Make it a training tool. There is a statewide security policy that's like 64 pages long and takes care of a lot of the legal stuff, and you can reference to that. But on your own side, pull out stuff that's really important to you. Train your teachers with regular security training. For phishing, sit them down with the tools that they use every day, like the email that your district uses and the web browser that you've chosen to use, and teach them how to hover over links and see where they're actually going if they click on something, and how not to open attachments from sources they're not sure about. Also, make sure that they're up to date on current threats, and you can get those from a lot of the sources that Laquetta mentioned, like the OKISAC and MSISAC. And through this, I want to mention a few names of companies. This is not an endorsement of those, but just let you know that we do use KnowBe4 for our security training at the state regents. We do annual training. It's kind of a longer training, and then we do monthly kind of refreshers as well. They also phish us, so they'll send us phishing emails and try to get, we phish ourselves to try to get our employees to click on something they shouldn't. And if they do, then it's not punitive. We just make sure that they get the training they need so that they're not clicking on actual phishing emails. Really, layered security is a concept where you stack a lot of these things up with your education. Next slide, please. Yeah, thanks. So things like antivirus installed on all your computers, a firewall, preferably a layer 7 firewall that can do some virus scanning itself and protect you from known bad sites. Making sure your software is patched. That's extremely important. And then that training we just talked about. If you can do multi-factor authentication, a lot of you may be using Google or Microsoft for your email, and you can use for free. They've got multi-factor authentication set up. So even if for some reason your users lose their password to the bad guys, they still can't get access to those accounts. Keeping your software patched, one of the parts of layered security. There's a lot of, it's a very important thing to do. There's different ways you can do it. If you're a small district and you have to, oh, sorry, next slide. If you have to do manual patching, turn all that automatic patching on, so that computers are automatically patched. There's also some inexpensive tools like from Microsoft, System Manager or Config Manager to help you make sure that everything is patched. Identify your third-party applications. So the operating system is a big part of it and really probably your biggest target. But if you've got software that helps you manage your lunch program or your grades for your students or facilities, all those kinds of things, make sure that you've got a plan to keep those patched. And like I said, monitor your patch status. So if you, I'll mention the MSISAC quite a few times. We're members and it's free. If you're a K-12 in Oklahoma or if you're a K-12 anywhere in the US, it's a free service. You need to contact them and they'll have a document for you to sign. Basically, it's a two-way agreement that you're not going to share each other's data. And then they've got tools that you can load that to help you watch your network for patches, a configuration assessment to make sure you don't have anything open. We use a product called Tenable in-house to watch to make sure everything is patched. It supports lots of different operating systems, but it's a good tool to make sure all your patches are applied. Again, just to make sure that you haven't missed something. It's pretty easy to get all but just a few things patched, and then those few things are the ones that end up getting you. Next slide, please. Also, to kind of take the teeth away from those ransomware attacks, make sure all of your important data is backed up, preferably offsite. Use an automated backup tool to make sure that your data is backed up regularly, and then test that recovery to make sure you can actually get your data back. If you're using tools, there are free tools out there like Windows Backup. It comes with Microsoft Windows, and you can use it to back up your servers and even your desktops if you want. But make sure that there's an air gap there so that it backs up to a drive, but make sure that drive's not writable so that the bad guys' software can't just go delete your backups. So even if it's something as simple as a USB stick or an external drive, make sure that that's either rotated or detached when you're not backing up. Personally, at home, I use Backblaze. We don't use it at work, but it's a good tool if you've got just a few. It's a commercial tool, but if you've got just a few machines to back up, it's fairly inexpensive, and it gives you that air gap. Duplicati is an open source tool you can use and point it towards all kinds of stuff. One that has some archival storage you can point it towards. You can use Amazon S3, even Google's Google Drive or Microsoft's file service. You can point your backups to that. And I think for education, they give you unlimited storage. Try not to take advantage too much, but for your important data, I think that's a legitimate use. And then next slide, I'm monitoring your network. So it could be that you get compromised and you don't even know it. Sometimes the bad actors are, they'll put it in your face. Hey, we just encrypted all your data and give us $1 million or we won't give it back. And sometimes they're just sitting there quietly looking to see what kind of data they can pull off of your network about your users. So if there's a way that you can get some visibility, we use the product from MSISAC. Actually, we use several different intrusion detection systems, but one of them that we really like is from MSISAC called the Albert service. And it's fairly inexpensive. You provide your own little server and they install their software on it and keep watch over your network. And they're really quick to let you know if they see something that looks odd, and they'll give you a call. And it's really for a 24/7, 365, actual people watching your network. It's really very inexpensive. I think we pay for the big 10 gig and up subscription. I think it's less than $3,000 a year, and it's a lot less expensive for smaller connections. So really just a way to make sure that you can see it. If you've got a layer 7 firewall, that's another good way to know, it can tell you if it's seeing some odd things going on in your network. Next slide, please. So there's a lot of resources out there. These are some of the ones I've talked about, and Laquetta had some great ones as well. So, just do a little research and see if any of these look interesting to you. Next slide is my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me. I can also put you in charge with our Chief Information Security Officer, Chris Cossack. He's got a team that works with him, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Thanks for your time.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate that. Before we go on, I'm going to ask you, Brian, to tell us that infrastructure that's behind you, if you don't mind.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. So the picture that's in my background is our Oklahoma City data center. We house most of the applications that OneNet serves. We have 2 main sites, Oklahoma City and Tulsa. This is our Oklahoma City data center. And if you have equipment you want to put in that data center, we offer that as a service, but all of our services come out of here. Very well connected to multiple ISPs, OneNet, and also multiple POPs across the state. Thanks.
Thank you. I think it's impressive. They're behind you. Anyway, again, thank you, Brian. And again, thank you, Laquetta. Now we'll look at the chat, see what questions there might be for us here. Okay, first question is, I mentioned that the presentation would be posted on our website. Will the slides be available? The entire presentation will be there. If you need accommodation with something that you don't find there, then you'll have my contact information here in a minute, and get with me and I'll see what I can do for you. I think the same with will the slide deck be made available as a download or a link? Again, we can work through that there. Next question, is there a resource to assist in evaluating our school security and making recommendations for improvement? I think I'll go to you first, Laquetta, but I'll be asking you as well, Brian.
I'm not for sure, but I think this person said that their question had been answered. But I can review security plans. I'm only a staff of 1.5, but I am more than happy to do that.
Great, and Brian, do you have anything to add to that?
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that Laquetta had that, and that's great. I do know OKISAC and MSISAC can also help with those things. If you want to hit multiple people, that may actually be a good idea to have multiple people look at it. We have some tools we can run if you'd like us to run them against your network, and we'd be happy to provide you some reports. But yeah, especially for schools, there's some good inexpensive or free resources.
We have a few other questions real quick. The first one is, when it comes to cybersecurity exercises, I'm sure you both agree that your cybersecurity plan needs to be exercised. I would ask, how often? Everyone says regularly exercised. What would you say regularly means? Brian, I'm going to pick on you first.
Sure. So regularly for us, I mean, our official, we do once a year, a tabletop exercise, which is, if you're not familiar with it, it's basically a logical exercise where you come up with this thing happened. Mrs. Swanson clicked on something and now everybody's computers are acting weird. And so you just step through, what would you do? And you can use that to test your different policies, your security response policy, and really take time to, don't just gloss over the steps. Say, okay, we're going to contact this person. Our policy says we're going to contact this person. We'll call them up and say, hey, is this still the right person to call? And just, think through all the things that that would happen, so that you have them written down and you don't have to think of them again when the stress is on and it really is happening.
Perfect. And then Laquetta, I want to add to that and kind of integrate my question, if you will. Seeing exercises done on emergency operations plans and other specific annexes, How useful is it to, I would think very useful, to see cybersecurity integrated into other exercises? We're so dependent on technology. We're so dependent on connectivity. So tell us a little bit about that, because I bet you've had some experience in that area.
I think it's really, I mean, that's one of the things that we're trying to stress to our locals, to add a cyber annex to their EOP and to exercise it. So a lot of times for the emergency managers that we deal with, you know, they see floods, they see tornadoes, they see all kind of natural disasters, but they don't necessarily think about, you know, cyber as being a hazard, you know, also. So trying to get them more familiar with cyber, you know, just if nothing else, the basics, and then how they can help in the event if there is an attack, you know. So having that plan and having that conversation is really critical. And if they can add their cyber incidents response to their emergency operations plan, that's just great. And then test that, make sure everybody is aware of it, and then and what they need to do. So I would say, you know, they at least need to test it, you know, yearly, but as often as necessary.
Right. Kind of in that same lane, if a school leader finds themselves in a hostage situation, what's the very first action you recommend they take? Brian, I'm going to pick on you real quick. If you throw your ideas in there.
Well, first thing is, you know, get everything disconnected, and so that whatever is spreading stops spreading, whether that means unplugging or turn off switches or turning off the Wi-Fi. And then, you know, hopefully go to that plan. But you can, if you're a member, whether you're a member of the MSISAC or not, you can call them. It'll be quicker if you're already a member, because they've got resources. The OKISAC, Laquetta had some other good contact information there. Just you might fill out some of the different services, and you pick the one that you're most comfortable with as your first go-to. But yeah, get it separated out, so that you can, you know, keep it from getting worse before you start stepping through getting back.
Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I would just, you know, second what he says. You know, you want to isolate those systems, you know, so that it doesn't, you know, infect, you know, other systems. So isolate it as soon as possible.
We keep talking about plans and policies. Do either of you have some model policies that you could offer as examples that we could post with the webinar, if you will?
I can share with you the template that I provided to our local emergency management managers. It's just a cyber annex, and it's just a template of all the components that, you know, probably should be in a plan.
It'd be great, because just need a starting point a lot of times. But that sounds wonderful. Let's see. Oh, here's a good one. Any recommendations on curriculum for our students to be more aware operating in a cyber unsecure world, if you will?
So
and I'll take that one to Brian. Sorry. Oh, go ahead, Laquetta.
Oh, no problem. I was just going to say, here at the state, you know, they've contracted with a vendor, and basically, you know, every year they update their content with, you know, relevant content for cybersecurity and awareness training. And then what we're trying to do here at OMES is to, not OMES, but for Emergency Management Homeland Security. I used to work for OMES, so it's kind of getting confusing sometimes. But what we do is we're trying to put together some training opportunities for our emergency managers, just to get them more familiar, not just with basic cybersecurity, but get them more familiar with, you know, what kind of roles they could play.
Brian, you have anything to add to that?
It's a great question. Like we use Know4, which is a commercial solution, but MSISAC, and I think OKISAC also has some free tools that you can use to build some of your own training. And I think it's a great idea, really, to teach your students and your teachers, you know, not just how to protect themselves while they're at school, but at home as well. because,
Good point.
just build we'll be better off if we can build a whole society of people that know how to protect themselves online.
We do have another item here. How would you implement a VPN in your network when internal connections are needed? And where and when do you advise a VPN connection? Also, our firewall tries to block these from student use. Anyone want to tackle that?
Brian?
Well,
Okay, Brian.
a lot of times your firewall has that capability. Certainly if you've got a more advanced firewall for inbound connections, blocking outbound VPNs is a very good idea. You should know about it and be able to whitelist stuff where people are trying to go out of your school's network for VPN. That's good. But then I think it's really kind of up to your policy. I know we certainly use VPN a lot. If you can put two-factor on that VPN, most firewalls support some flavor of two-factor authentication, because if that password gets out, if any of your teachers' passwords gets out and that VPN's open, that really exposes your network. But that two-factor can make a big difference. And just a lot of stuff's compatible with Google Authenticator. That LastPass has an authenticator that's compatible with that. And most firewalls, it's called TOTP, time-based one-time password, is a really open standard and pretty good. So I would encourage you to look into that if you're going to turn on VPN where it's open to the outside world.
Another one, what about products like Bark that use bots to scrub for certain words like cyberbullying? Are these products safe to use? Laquetta, I'll pick on you. Any ideas on that one?
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that. So,
Brian, you have anything to add?
I'm really not familiar with Bark either.
Okay.
It sounds like a good idea, but you probably, before you have, I guess if it's out there in the open and they're just scanning social media, it would be stuff they have access to anyway. But I don't know. I'm not familiar, but I like the idea.
Okay.
I would
got
give
a couple more. Go ahead.
I would say I'd be a little concerned about giving an open tool access to your internal network to scan if you're not familiar with them, but that's a good question.
Tread lightly, sounds like. All right, how do we deal with, I know this is an ongoing issue, whether it's a school or a state agency or even private sector, how do we deal with people bringing their own devices to schools? How do we maintain the security for the school as well as the person who's brought their personal device? Any things you want to add there? Laquetta, I'm going to go to you first.
So I think one thing is that you need to set a policy as far as whether you allow that or not. And so if the policy is that you don't bring personal devices and connect them into our network, then we need to make sure that our users know that. Some places where you go, if you bring in a personal device, it doesn't allow you to get onto the network. So I think you need to identify those policies and make sure users are aware of those.
Brian, anything to add there?
Yeah, I'd say whether you allow it or not, you all know better than we do probably what's right for your students. But I would say if you're going to allow it, make sure it's segmented off from the rest of your network, because students' devices, even if the student's well-intentioned, they may have a malware on their device. So you don't want that to have access to your private network. And then of course, make sure that all your content filtering is in place to protect those students while they're on the network.
Very good. So thank you for taking the questions, Laquetta and Brian, and for your presentations. Jason, if you'll move to the next slide, please. Here, I've added my contact information as well. So throughout our webinar today, you've got contact information for both of our speakers, Brian and Laquetta. You've also got mine if you have any questions. Remember, we are going to post this on our website. In advance of that, we're going to ask for your input. So a survey will be emailed to each of you regarding today's webinar. We do take, we treat very important the information that you all provide us. It's a priority that we include the information you provide in order to provide a better product, a better webinar. So after you submit your survey, a professional development certificate will be sent your way. So please make sure you do that. This is the final Awareness in Action webinar this school year, but we will return in August for next year's campaign of Awareness in Action webinars. In August, we'll have one on asthma awareness, the issues there that surround children at our schools that have asthma. So look for more information regarding that, our webinar series, and you'll find that in our agency's school administrators newsletter. So look out for those, and we'll look forward to seeing you all at future webinars. Thank you again, speakers, for being here, and thank you again for participants. Take care and have a great day.